Yeah, I remembered what I wanted to say. Maybe I forgot because I don't have a name for it. I don't have a kind of picture, a kind of metaphor that I could use to express the idea. What I'm having in mind is maybe you have had the same observation that people tend to become more and more open in the course of time. When you look at the past, people were actually taking their information about the world from the people that they also had strong bondage with, the people that they felt responsible for and with which they felt solidarity for. In other words, their friends were not only their friends, not only helping them, they were not only part of a kind of community, but these friends are also those who were informing them about their world and their worldview. This is where they were taking their information from. This has diversified a lot, actually, in the past 2 decades. I think the sources that we take to inform ourselves about the world have grown largely beyond our own immediate connections of people that we trust and the friends, and of course beyond those of the typical nation states and the typical publishing houses, for example, that we trust. So Integral is also expressive of this kind of idea. If you just look at the divergent sources, they don't come from one single tradition, but you basically get bits and pieces from many, many different traditions that you inform your worldview. And many of these people you wouldn't consider your friends, you wouldn't consider your idols, you wouldn't consider part of your immediate community, and yet in Integral you take something from them and find a way of appreciating what they have to say. So this traditional divide between opposing groups that hate each other, they can't stand each other, is something that Integral breaks up. It takes something from all the camps, and it doesn't really treat reality as opposing camps, and it helps you to get informed about the world in a more impersonal kind of way. On the one hand, you have the personal element where, of course, you're following specific figures that you experience to be more than just information bearers. They're more to you. They mean something to you. There are idols for you. There are guiding lights that you follow. But on the other hand, Integral also introduces this more impersonal level of just looking at specific ideas and specific contributions and letting them into your worldview, even if they come from camps that you don't find particularly attracted to. I don't know how to call this principle, but it's something, again, very trivial, but also very important. What Integral basically does with your worldview, it starts to open it up for others to show up as something that you wouldn't necessarily experience more people than as friends. These kind of new sources that you use to inform yourself, they don't become a part of your we space. Your we space will always remain very, very limited to few people when it comes, of course, to your family and your friends, and also those who you really, really, the kind of opinion leaders that really matter to you. I think even those will always remain very, very limited. It's just not possible to have this kind of this kind of personal relationship that you feel for someone who is really important to you and who has been really important to you in building up your worldview. This is not something you can have with everyone. It's just not possible to do. You're limited here in your capacity to feel this kind of emotion and this kind of feeling for people. Just as some have it in science and they have their scientific idols, others have it in different religious traditions and they have their leading figures. This is something that will stick for us, I guess, forever. But what Integral adds to the picture is this kind of appreciation for others and for their perspectives, and this kind of recognition that they have something important to contribute, even though you're not friends, even though you don't feel like you are a part of that specific paradigm, and you feel particularly strong in that paradigm, but still you can see its validity and its value, and that's really a game changer. It's something different. It's something that Ken has been expressing in the idea that everyone is right. This is not only about the right being part, the being right part. I think the really crucial part of this, the more emotional level of this, is that you start to appreciate everyone. You start to appreciate everyone who's surrounding you, and even those who you feel are triggering you. You start to consciously notice the triggerings and how other people are really pushing you, and you can't stand them, but you can see light in them. And this is, again, trivial, but one extremely important integral contribution that we will need as an element for what is then to come and to build something bigger out of that. And I think will be a bit new. It's something that it's not very typical of cultural spaces in general. Cultural spaces, no matter where you go, will usually have this inside-outside divide and this tendency to make fun of the outside and to ridicule the outside, to dehumanize that which is other, that which is foreign, and that which doesn't live up to one's own expectations. And Integral is breaking that out a bit, and this is something that potentially makes it a global philosophy. Again, without necessarily meaning that everyone has to use the integral map or that everyone will come at the result of an integral map. I think there are many different versions of integral that are possible and can perfectly coexist with each other. That's the one point I wanted to mention. It's again very obvious, but let's just bring it back into consciousness. Another point I wanted to mention in this context is that integral is building on what has already established itself. It's not bringing radically new practices into the world, but if something has stood out in the past of human history as something that has shown its value, then integral actually brings it in. So if, for example, competition or being competitive with others is something that people have in the past enjoyed, integral will create a space where you can be competitive. If, on the other hand, being more agreeable and having a more a less competitive, a more cooperative element to it, if you want. If that practice has established itself in the past and we have been doing it, integral will also create a space for that, so that this can find its due. If in the past people have been meeting in small groups and find it particularly enjoyable to hang around with people in small groups, then integral will find a space where people can meet in small groups because this is something valuable. If people in the past have been dancing around fires and, I don't know, telling stories, then integral will find a space for that as well. If people in the past have been enjoying building their houses with their own hands, integral will create a space for that as well. Of course, integral also introduces a few new forms, or it readapts, if you want, practices that we've been doing forever, but still it builds on that which has established itself in past human experience. This is integral is there. It's not in opposition to society. It doesn't exist in opposition to societal practices, but it is there to bring the best of societal practices together at one spot and let them meet. The practices that usually can't stand each other when they're out there in the wild in society. What integral does is it brings them in one room and forces them to sit together and, well, appreciate each other at least a bit. So this is also very important, very trivial, but we have to find ways of making space for the practices that we have been doing all along. So if people have been cooking together and enjoying that, integral, again, it has to create a space where we do that. It just can't like force everyone to lead this kind of discussions that I'm trying to force on you right now. I know this is something that is more suits my style of thinking. I know that it's something that suits my more Asperger, if you want, like-ish approach. I know that other people are more normal than me and they don't like this kind of analytic and systemic kind of approach, and I don't want everyone to do this. The only thing that I'm hoping for is that others can at least see the value, its potential value, how it can contribute to something where everyone can have some kind of little voice and little kind of contributions for something communal and something bigger. That's the only thing that I'm asking for, to see, again, as I think it was in one of the recent Rebel Wisdom's interviews with someone who was explicitly outing himself as an Asperger, and he was basically saying how important it is to also integrate that perspective and to see how much of modern development and in modern civilization it has been driving. And if we leave the Aspergers behind, you will lose some really, really important tools that you could have at your hands for making sense and for actually creating a kind of global unity and coherence that otherwise just wouldn't be there. Of course, the Asperger perspective itself is hopelessly partial. Of course, it's hopelessly imperfect and not particularly well integrated, if you want. But still, it's an important perspective to at least leave some room for. That was the other thing I wanted to say. Yeah, these two principles, to build on past practices and to see how integral is opening you for for a more impersonal way of of being informed and getting in a relationship with the world that is more appreciative of that which is around you, again in this cosmocentric kind of way where you can appreciate every single one individual for its existence and its individual contribution to existence, while at the same time also retaining, of course, the trivial truth that you can't have a strong relationship to all individuals. You can't feel a kind of personal love for all individuals and a kind of personal responsibility and solidarity for all individuals, but that will be limited to your immediate surroundings with people who are there. Okay, these two principles, again, very trivial, but also very important to bring back into memory.